The rifle felt wrong in Callum Ashford's hands. Wrong weight, wrong balance, wrong everything. The wood stock was cold against his cheek, slick with condensation from his breath. Through the narrow window of Shackleton House, across 600 yards of grey South Atlantic water, the Argentine corvette ARA Garico carved a white wake into King Edward Cove. Cal's finger rested on the trigger of the L-42A1, a rifle older than his father, a rifle that belonged in a museum, not a war. The corvette's bridge windows reflected the pale Antarctic sun. Somewhere behind that glass, men were coordinating the invasion of South Georgia. 22 British Royal Marines against 100 Argentine commandos, and Cal was about to do something spectacularly stupid. He was going to shoot a warship. The wind gusted 40 knots across the cove, carrying the smell of peat and kelp and diesel. Cal's hands trembled not from cold, but from the awkward mechanics of the bolt action. 15 years since he'd worked one of these. 15 years of semi-automatic rifles, of quick follow-up shots, of modern warfare. Now this. Victorian engineering against 20th century naval power. Through the 3.5 times scope, the bridge windows swam in and out of focus. The ship was moving, rising and falling in the swell. Cal's training screamed at him. Moving target, extreme wind, unfamiliar weapon, impossible shot. Lieutenant Colonel Alistair Rees's voice crackled in his ear, calm as Sunday morning. "Bridge windows, Ashford. Make them flinch." Cal exhaled. The crosshairs settled. His finger tightened. The L-42A1 barked, a sharp crack that echoed off the mountains. Through the scope, Cal saw nothing. No impact. No reaction. Damn it! Cycle the bolt. Cal's hands fumbled. The bolt was stiff, unfamiliar. He yanked it up, back, forward, down. The empty casing clinked on the wooden floor. Another round chambered. His shoulder ached from the recoil. He found the bridge again, steadied his breathing, fired. This time he saw it, a starburst crack across the bridge window. Tiny at this distance, but unmistakable, the corvette's bow swung hard to starboard. Evasive maneuvers. The crew had felt that shot, even if it hadn't penetrated. Cal stared at the rifle in his hands, breathing hard. "That actually worked," he whispered. Rees's voice came back, dry as desert sand. "Told you? First round hit." 3 weeks earlier, Cal had been drinking scotch in a London safe house, watching rain streak down the windows of a Georgian townhouse in Belgravia. The man across the table was agency. Mid-50s, grey suit, grey hair, grey everything. The kind of face you forgot the moment you looked away. "Argentina's moving on the Falklands," Grey Suit said. "Galtieri's government is collapsing. They need a distraction. The islands are it." Cal set down his glass. Outside, black taxis hissed through puddles. "And we care because Thatcher's going to war. The Brits are assembling a task force. 8,000 miles from home, middle of the South Atlantic, winter coming on." Grey Suit slid a folder across the table. "We need eyes on the ground, someone they'll trust." Cal opened the folder. Maps of wind-swept islands, intelligence briefs, photos of Argentine positions. "You worked with the Royal Marines in Oman," Grey Suit continued. '79, counterinsurgency ops in Darfur. They remember you favorably. That was 3 years ago. Different war. Same principles. We're officially neutral, but state wants assessment of British capabilities. Can they actually retake the islands? What's their doctrine, their equipment, their morale? Grey Suit leaned forward. "We need someone who understands both sides, someone who can operate with their units and report back." Cal looked at the maps. Barren islands, 1,200 miles from anywhere. He'd spent the last 7 years in the shadows, training guerrillas in the bush, running guns across borders that didn't officially exist. The kind of work where you moved at night and trusted no one. This was different. Conventional war, trenches and artillery, and everything he'd left behind when he'd joined the agency. "I'm covert operations," Cal said, "not a forward observer. Consider it a career-broadening opportunity." "I could say no," Greysuit smiled without warmth. "You could, but you won't. Flight leaves Bryce Norton tomorrow. Pack cold weather gear." The meeting was over. Cal walked out into London rain, collar turned up against the wind, and wondered what he'd done to deserve this. HMS Fearless smelled like diesel and stale coffee and the sweat of 500 men preparing for war. Cal found Lieutenant Colonel Alistair Rees in the ship's briefing room, bent over a topographical map of the Falklands. The older man didn't look up when Cal entered. "You're the agency liaison?" "Callum Ashford, Cal." "Alistair Rees. You'll call me Colonel." Now Rees looked up. 55 years old, face like weathered granite, eyes that had seen too many of the wrong things. "You operated with 42 Commando in Oman. Captain Henderson speaks highly of you." "Henderson's generous." Henderson's never been generous in his life." Rees straightened, rolling up the map. "You'll be embedded with my sniper section. 6 men. We provide reconnaissance and precision fire support. Standard issue is the L-42A1. He gestured to a rifle rack against the bulkhead. Cal walked over, lifted one of the weapons. The L-42A1 was an anachronism. Bolt action, wood stock. The kind of rifle his instructors had used when he'd been a Green Marine, back when Kennedy was still alive. The metal was pitted with age, but clean, well maintained. The scope looked like it had been manufactured before color television. "You're joking," Cal said. "Do I look like I'm joking?" "This is 1895 technology, Colonel. The Argentines have FALs, modern semi-automatics, 20-round magazines." Cal worked the bolt. It moved smooth as butter, but that wasn't the point. "This thing belongs in a museum." Rees's expression didn't change. "That thing never jammed on me during 18 months in Belfast. Rain, mud, snow. Fired every time I pulled the trigger. Can you say the same about your fancy M21? Cal bristled. "Semi-automatic gives tactical advantage, multiple targets, quick engagement, follow-up shots. Only if you can't shoot." Rees took the rifle from Cal's hands, worked the bolt, sighted down the barrel. "First round hit, Ashford. That's all that matters. You hit with your first shot. You don't need a follow-up. The enemy's dead, and you're already displacing. And if I miss, then you weren't properly trained." Rees handed the rifle back. "British sniper doctrine is simple. Observe, identify, calculate, fire, one shot. If you need a second shot, you've already failed. The bolt action enforces discipline, makes you think before you shoot." Cal looked down at the rifle, 10 pounds of wood and steel. A relic from his grandfather's war, maybe his great-grandfather's. "I've been shooting semi-auto for 15 years, he said quietly. "Then you'll learn something new." Rees moved to the door, paused. "We sail for South Georgia in 6 hours. Argentines invaded 2 days ago. Small garrison, but it's British soil. We're taking it back." He looked at Cal. "You're assigned to my section. You'll carry the L-42A1. British logistics only. No American weapons on my team." "I don't have a choice." "You always have a choice, Ashford. You can stay here and write reports, or you can come ashore and learn how real snipers work." The door closed. Cal stood alone in the briefing room, holding a rifle that felt like history mocking him. The first 3 days aboard Fearless, Cal tried to make peace with the L-42A1. He stripped it down to components on his bunk. The action was James Paris Lee's design from 1895, refined through 2 world wars and a dozen colonial conflicts, cock-on closing mechanism, rear locking lugs. The kind of engineering that didn't need computers or aerospace alloys. just steel and wood and the accumulated wisdom of generations of gunsmiths. He dry-fired it until his trigger finger ached. The pull was crisp, clean, no creep. The safety was positive. The bolt throw was short, efficient. As a piece of machinery, it was actually beautiful, simple, purposeful, nothing wasted. But it was still slow. Cal's muscle memory fought him. 15 years of semi-automatic fire had trained instincts he couldn't shut off. Rapid target acquisition, multiple shots. His hands wanted to pull the trigger again immediately, but there was no second shot. Just the manual cycle of the bolt. Up, back, forward, down, every single time. Reese watched him struggle on the third day, out on the pitching deck where they'd set up a makeshift range. Canvas targets snapping in the wind. The South Atlantic stretched grey and infinite to every horizon. "You're fighting the rifle," Reese said. Cal fired, cycled the bolt, fired again. The targets were at 200 yards, easy range, but his groups were spreading. Frustration made him sloppy. "I'm trying to adapt," Cal muttered. "No, you're trying to make it something it's not." Reese moved beside him, voice calm against the wind. "The rifle isn't the problem. Your expectations are. You want speed, volume of fire. The L-42A1 doesn't give you that. It gives you something else." "What?" "Certainty." Reese took the rifle, worked the bolt with unconscious grace. "When you fire this weapon, you know you've done the work, read the wind, calculated the range, controlled your breathing. One shot is all you get, so you make damn sure it's the right shot. Semi-automatic lets you be lazy. Spray and pray. Hope something connects." He handed the rifle back. "This rifle doesn't let you hope. It makes you know." Cal looked down at the L-42A1. The woodstock was dark with oil and age. How many men had fired this weapon? How many wars had it seen? "I've trained half of Latin America with M21s, he said. "Effective doctrine, proven results. For insurgency, ambushes, close-range work." Reese pointed across the grey water. "The Falklands aren't jungle. They're open moorland. Wind that'll knock you flat. Ranges out to 1,000 yards. You won't get close. You won't get multiple chances. You'll get one shot in conditions that'll make your fancy optics useless, and when that moment comes, you'll need discipline, not technology." Cal raised the rifle again. This time, he slowed down, felt the wind on his face, watched the canvas target ripple and sway, calculated the correction, breathed out, squeezed. The target snapped hard. Center mass. He cycled the bolt, took his time, fired again. Another hit. Reese nodded. "Better keep that up for the next week. You might survive." April 3rd. The dawn came grey and cold over Grytviken. Cal lay on the wooden floor of Shackleton House, second story, corner window. The glass was gone. He'd smashed it out with the rifle butt when the corvette had appeared in the cove. Now wind howled through the frame, bringing sleet and the sound of diesel engines. Below, in the settlement, 22 Royal Marines were spread across defensive positions. Against them, 100 Argentine commandos and the firepower of a naval vessel. The math was simple. The British were going to lose, unless someone did something insane. Cal's radio crackled, Reese's voice, somewhere in the rocks above the town. "Ashford, bridge of the corvette, 600 yards. You see it?" Through the scope, Cal found the ARA Jericho. The ship was moving cautiously into the cove, main gun trained on the shore. The bridge was a rectangle of light, windows showing movement inside. Men, officers, coordinating the assault. "I see it," Cal said. "Engage. Make them reconsider their approach." Cal's hands were steady now. 3 weeks of drilling with Reese, of learning to read wind through grass movement and peat smoke, of understanding the L-42A1's particular language. The rifle no longer felt foreign. It felt inevitable. He adjusted for wind, for the ship's movement, for the rise and fall of the swell. The calculations were instinctive now, muscle memory rebuilt from scratch. The first shot surprised him with its clarity. The rifle spoke. The bridge window didn't shatter, but he saw the impact, a mark, a crack. He cycled the bolt, smooth, automatic. The empty casing rang on the floor. The second shot connected higher. Another star burst across the glass. Through the scope, Cal saw figures diving for cover inside the bridge. The corvette's bow swung hard, engines reversing. The captain was pulling back, reassessing. A rifle had just made a warship blink. Cal lowered the L-42A1, heart pounding. Below he heard the distinctive crack of L-1A1 rifles as the Marines engaged the landing force. The fight for Grytviken had begun in earnest. But the corvette wasn't pressing its advantage, it was holding position, crew shaken. Reese's voice came through the radio, carrying something Cal hadn't heard before. Approval. "Good shooting, Ashford. Now displace before they range you." Cal grabbed the rifle and moved. The battle raged for another hour. When it was over, the British had held. Barely. The Argentines controlled the island, but they'd paid for it. And Cal had learned something that no amount of CIA training had taught him. Sometimes the old ways worked because they were the right ways. 3 weeks later, HMS Fearless sailed south from Ascension Island. The main task force, 3,000 men heading for the Falklands, 8,000 miles from home, winter coming on. Cal stood on deck, watching the grey water slip past. In his hands, the L-42A1, his rifle now, assigned, accepted. Reese joined him at the rail. "Main force at Port Stanley," the colonel said. 8,000 Argentine troops, dug in, prepared. They've had 6 weeks to fortify. And we're going in with 3,000. Numbers don't tell the whole story. Cal looked at the rifle. "Grytviken taught me something." "What's that?" "That I've been thinking about warfare wrong for years. Maybe my whole career." Cal ran his hand along the wood stock. "I thought advancement meant technology. Better weapons, faster fire, more bullets downrange, but that's not what makes a sniper effective, is it?" Reese waited. "It's discipline," Cal said. "Patience, the certainty that when you pull the trigger, the target goes down. Not hope, not probability, certainty. And this rifle," he held up the L-42A1, "this rifle enforces that, makes it the only option. Now you're learning?" "I still think it's obsolete," Reese smiled, rare and brief. "So are we. Doesn't mean we're not effective." Below decks, men were checking equipment, loading magazines, writing letters home, doing all the small rituals that soldiers do before battle. Some of them would die on those wind-swept islands. The math was cold and clear. Cal thought about the corvette, about 600 yards and 2 shots from a rifle that his instructors would have called inadequate, about the discipline Reese had beaten into him over 3 weeks of hard training. "I'm ready," he said. "No, you're not." Reese turned from the rail. "But you will be. The Falklands will teach you what I couldn't. That survival isn't about the weapon, it's about the man holding it." The colonel walked away. Cal stayed on deck, watching the South Atlantic darken toward evening. Somewhere ahead, across 500 miles of grey water, the Falklands waited. And beyond them, the war that would test everything he thought he knew about combat, about sniping, about himself. The L-42A1 was cold and solid in his hands, a rifle from another era, carrying him toward a battle that would define whether old wisdom could still defeat modern power. Cal smiled into the wind. First round hit. That's all that mattered. The Falklands smelled like the end of the world. Peat, wet wool, kelp rotting on black beaches. Cal stepped off the landing craft into ankle-deep water at San Carlos, May 21st, and the wind hit him like a fist. 40 miles per hour, gusting higher. The kind of wind that turned rain horizontal and made standing upright an act of defiance. Around him, 3,000 men were coming ashore, commandos, paras, Royal Marines. They moved in disciplined silence, weapons wrapped against the spray, faces set against the cold. Somewhere across these barren islands, 8,000 Argentines waited in prepared positions. Cal hefted his pack and followed Reese up the beach. The L-42A1 was wrapped in canvas, protected from the salt spray. 3 weeks at sea, and he'd fired the rifle every day the weather allowed. His groups had tightened, his confidence had grown. But this wasn't a ship's deck, this was the Falklands, and the Falklands played by different rules. The first patrol went out 36 hours after landing. Cal and Reese, with 4 Marines for security. Mission: recon the approaches to Darwin and Goose Green, where Argentine forces had dug in across the narrow isthmus. Intelligence said 1,400 enemy troops, prepared positions, minefields, interlocking fields of fire. The British were going to assault with 600 men. They moved at night across terrain that seemed designed to break ankles and spirits in equal measure. Peat bogs that could swallow a man to his waist, tussock grass that hid stones and holes, streams that ran black as oil in the moonlight. Cal had operated in mountains, in jungle, in desert, but this was something else. This was landscape as enemy. Hostile and indifferent and vast. Dawn found them 2 miles from Darwin Hill. They'd been moving for 6 hours and covered maybe 5 miles. Cal's legs ached. His feet were soaked despite waterproof boots. The wind never stopped, never even paused, and the temperature hovered just above freezing. Reese pointed to a low rise 800 yards from the Argentine positions. There, we'll observe from there. They crawled the last 400 yards, set up in a hide scraped into the peat, camouflaged with local grass. Through binoculars, Cal could see the Argentine positions clearly. Bunkers, trenches, fighting positions reinforced with rocks and sandbags, and movement, patrols, sentries changing shift. Reese handed him the L-42A1. See that trench line? Second position from the left. Officers been moving between positions every 20 minutes. Patterns consistent. Next time he appears, take him. Cal settled behind the rifle. 800 yards, not difficult in normal conditions, but the wind was gusting 25-30 miles per hour. The grass around them rippled like water. Peat smoke from Argentine cooking fires rose and twisted, showing the air currents in visible form. He calculated windage the way he'd been taught. Drift tables, mathematical corrections, adjusted his aim point, and waited. The Argentine officer appeared, dark uniform against grey rock, moving between positions exactly as Reese had predicted. Cal fired. Through the scope, he saw Pete kick up 3 feet to the right of the target. Miss. Clean. Miss. He cycled the bolt. Found the target again. The officer was moving faster now, aware that someone was shooting. Cal fired again. Another miss. Left this time. The officer disappeared into cover. Gone. Cal lowered the rifle, jaw tight with frustration. Behind him, Reese said nothing. The silence was worse than criticism. Wind, Cal muttered. Yes. I calculated for it, adjusted. You calculated like you were on a range in Virginia. Reese moved beside him, looking across the moorland. This isn't textbook shooting, Ashford. The wind here doesn't follow rules. It swirls, changes. You can't calculate it. You have to feel it. Feel it. Watch the grass, not the target. The grass between you and the target. Reese pointed. See how it moves? Ripples running right to left near us, but switching left to right halfway across. That's two different wind currents. Your bullet's going to pass through both. Tables won't help you with that. Cal watched the grass. Reese was right. The wind wasn't uniform. It was layered, complex, chaotic. How am I supposed to compensate for that? Experience, instinct, trial and error. Reese took the rifle, sighted downrange. You watch the grass. You watch the peat smoke. You watch how the sheep move. Yes, sheep, they're smarter about wind than you are. You build a mental picture of what the air's doing, then you adjust. Fire, observe, adjust again. That could take hours. Then take hours or miss. Reese handed back the rifle. The Falklands will teach you what I can't, to stop thinking and start feeling. They observed for another 8 hours. Cal didn't fire again. He just watched, learned the rhythm of the wind, the way it changed with temperature, how it funneled through valleys and whipped over ridges. The grass became his teacher. The smoke, even the birds wheeling and diving in currents invisible to human eyes. When they exfiltrated that night, Cal's notebook was full of observations. But none of them were numbers. They were descriptions, feelings, the beginning of a new language. Goose Green, May 28th, dawn. 600 men of 2nd Battalion, Parachute Regiment, were going to assault 1,400 dug-in Argentine defenders across open ground. The plan was aggressive to the point of madness, a daylight attack with minimal artillery support. Victory would depend on speed, aggression, and the individual skill of British soldiers. Cal and Reese were attached to the battalion's sniper section. Their job, overwatch. Suppress enemy positions, eliminate high-value targets, create space for the assault to succeed. They set up 900 yards from the Argentine positions on Darwin Hill, Reese spotting, Cal shooting. The L-42A1 loaded with match-grade ammunition, 7.62mm, 155-grain projectiles, optimized for consistency. The wind was gusting 35 miles per hour. Rain came in squalls. Visibility dropped to 50 yards, then cleared to half a mile, then dropped again. Perfect conditions. If you were dug in and defending, hell on earth. If you were attacking. First target, Reese said, voice flat and professional. Machine gun position, Darwin Hill, range 920 yards. Wind right to left, 15 sustained, gusting to 25. Cal found the position. Sandbags, a barrel protruding, movement behind. He didn't calculate, not anymore. He felt. Read the grass between him and the target. Watched smoke from fires drift and swirl. Let his mind build the invisible map of air currents. He adjusted, breathed, fired. The machine gun position erupted, direct hit. The barrel tilted, useless. Reese's voice carried something new, satisfaction. Target neutralized, next position, 700 yards, trench line, 3 men visible. For the next 2 hours, Cal worked the rifle, slow, methodical, reading the Falklands wind like text. Each shot was a conversation with the landscape. The rifle spoke, the wind answered. Cal translated between them. Argentine machine gun positions went silent. Officers directing defensive fire dropped and didn't rise. Radio operators crumpled over their equipment. The L-42A1 never faltered. Rain soaked Cal's position, turned the peat to soup, but the rifle's mechanical simplicity meant nothing could jam. No electronics to short, no gas system to foul, just steel and wood and human discipline. Below, the assault began. Assault. Cal watched through the scope as British paratroopers rose from their positions and advanced across open ground. Thin lines of men moving toward prepared positions. It looked like suicide. It looked like something from wars his grandfather had fought. But the British weren't walking into uncontested fire. Cal and the other snipers had degraded the Argentine defense, created gaps, silenced the weapons that could have turned the moorland into a killing ground. The advance continued. Then the casualties began. A paratrooper went down 200 yards from Cal's position, hit. The man tried to crawl to cover, dragging one leg. Another soldier ran to help him. Both were caught by machine gun fire from a position Cal hadn't spotted. The helper died instantly. The wounded man kept crawling, slow, determined. Then he stopped moving. Through the scope, Cal could see his face. Young, maybe 19. Maybe younger, eyes open to the grey sky. Cal's hands tightened on the rifle. Every instinct screamed to suppress that Argentine position, pour fire downrange, make them keep their heads down, save the next man advancing across that terrible ground. Reese's hand gripped his shoulder. Discipline. They're dying down there, Bull, and every round you waste means more die. Find the position, one shot, kill the gunner, then displace before they range you. Reese's voice was iron. This is what we do, Ashford. We don't spray and pray. We don't hope, we identify, we calculate, we kill, cleanly, efficiently, so those boys down there have a chance. Cal found the machine gun position, partially concealed behind rocks, muzzle flash betraying its location. He read the wind, felt the rifle settle, exhaled, fired. The machine gun stopped. Cal cycled the bolt, scanned for the next threat, found it, fired again. Another Argentine position went silent. The advance continued. By noon, the battle had devolved into brutal close combat. House to house in Darwin settlement, trench to trench on the ridges, the kind of fighting where rifles measured range in feet, not yards. Cal and Reese displaced forward, closer to the action, supporting where they could. But increasingly, the L-42A1's long-range precision was less useful than a submachine gun's close-quarters firepower. When the battle ended 18 hours after it began, the British had won. 18 of them were dead, 64 wounded. The Argentine casualties were higher, much higher. Cal sat in the ruins of a sheep shed, cleaning the L-42A1 with hands that shook from exhaustion. The rifle was caked with peat and mud, but when he worked the bolt, it cycled smooth as silk. Reese appeared in the doorway, silent. He sat down, handed Cal a tin cup of tea that was more whiskey than tea. "First real battle," Reese said. Cal nodded. "How many shots did you fire?" 19. "How many hits?" 17. 2 misses, both in the early going, before he'd fully read the wind conditions. "That's why we use bolt action," Reese said quietly, "because when you pull that trigger, you know, the target goes down, and somewhere down on that moorland, a British soldier makes it another 100 yards, reaches cover, survives the day. You didn't save him by firing fast, you saved him by firing right." Cal looked at the rifle, really looked at it. This weapon that he'd resented, fought against, finally learned to trust. "I understand now," he said. "Good." Reese stood. "Because in 2 weeks we're going after Mount Longdon, and that's going to make today look easy." Mount Longdon rose from the moorland like a broken jaw. Rocks and boulders scattered across its slopes, as if some giant had tried to build something and given up in disgust. Argentine's 7th Infantry Regiment had turned those rocks into a fortress, bunkers, fighting positions, interlocking fields of fire, 3,000 yards of hell. 3rd Battalion, Parachute Regiment, was going to take it, at night, through minefields, against defenders who'd had 2 months to prepare. Cal and Reese went forward 3 days before the assault. Deep reconnaissance. They needed to map the Argentine positions, identify high-value targets, create opportunities for the assault to succeed. They moved at night, crawled during the day, lived in a hide site 800 yards from the Argentine lines, so close they could hear the enemy soldiers talking, laughing, living. Cal spent 72 hours behind the L-42A1's scope, watching, learning, building a mental map of the mountain and everyone on it. He counted fighting positions, noted patrol patterns, identified where the officers gathered, where the communications equipment sat, where the reserves slept. And he shot, deliberately, carefully, one target per day, always from a different position, never giving the Argentines a chance to locate him. A radio man, an officer, a sentry, 14 confirmed kills over 3 days, each shot perfectly calculated, each target chosen to maximize disruption with minimum risk of counter-sniper fire. The L-42A1's bolt action gave him an advantage the Argentines couldn't match. No ejected brass to catch sunlight, no semi-automatic's distinctive sound signature, just the single crack of the shot echoing off rocks, impossible to pinpoint. By June 10th, the Argentine defenders were nervous, jumpy. They knew a sniper was out there but couldn't find him. It degraded their effectiveness, made them hesitant. Exactly what Cal intended. That night, Reese whispered in the darkness of their hide. "Tomorrow night, the assault goes in. We'll be on the northern approach. Counter-sniper work. The Argies have at least 2 snipers of their own. Night vision equipment. They'll try to break up our attack before it develops. And we hunt them." "We hunt them," Reese paused. "This won't be like Goose Green. This is going to be close. Brutal. When it goes to bayonets, the L-42A1 becomes a liability." Cal knew. 10 pounds of bolt-action rifle, limited scope, wrong tool for close combat. But getting to close combat meant surviving the approach, and that's where the rifle excelled. "One thing at a time," Cal said. June 11th, 9 p.m. The assault began. Cal and Reese were positioned on a rocky outcrop covering the 3rd Battalion's northern approach. Through the L-42A1's scope, Cal watched British paratroopers move through the darkness, silent, disciplined, ghosts in the night. Then Argentine flares began popping, white light flooding the mountainside, positions revealed, machine guns opened up. The battle for Mount Longdon had begun. Cal scanned for threats, found one. Argentine soldier with a rifle, scope, better equipment than standard infantry. Sniper. 600 yards, elevated position, the enemy sniper fired. A British soldier fell, Cal calculated. Wind was tricky in the rocks, swirling and unpredictable. He couldn't see grass to read, couldn't see smoke, just stone and shadow and the brief muzzle flash of enemy fire. He fired on instinct, pure feel. The Argentine sniper stopped shooting. "Hit or displacement?" Reese asked. "Don't know." They waited. 30 seconds, a minute. The Argentine sniper appeared again. Different position, 30 yards from where he'd been. Smart, professional. He fired. Another British soldier went down. Now it was a duel. Cal shifted position, moved 20 yards along the ridge. The L-42A1's bolt action meant he could displace silently. No telltale sound of a semi-automatic's action cycling. He found the enemy sniper again, partially concealed. Just the rifle barrel and a hint of shoulder visible. Cal didn't have a clean shot, but he took it anyway. Aimed for where the body should be behind the rock. Fired. The Argentine sniper jerked, slumped, didn't move again. Through the scope, Cal saw the man's rifle slip from dead hands. It clattered on the rocks, scope catching starlight. Reese's voice was quiet. "That's one." The battle raged. Cal worked the mountain, eliminating threats, machine gun positions, officers, anyone trying to coordinate the defense. The L-42A1 never failed. Each shot precise, each target down. But the fight was moving closer. By midnight, British paratroopers were in the rocks. Close combat, grenades and bayonets, and the terrible intimacy of men trying to kill each other at arm's length. Cal's position was suddenly in the middle of the fight. Argentine soldiers appeared from a trench 30 yards away, advancing, 6 of them, armed with FALs on full automatic. Cal swung the L-42A1 around. Too slow, too heavy, wrong weapon for this range. He fired anyway, dropped the lead soldier, cycled the bolt, fired again. Another down, but 4 were still coming, and he couldn't cycle the bolt fast enough. Reese appeared beside him with an L-1A1 rifle, semi-automatic, 20 rounds. He engaged the advancing Argentines with controlled bursts. 3 went down. The 4th threw a grenade. The explosion was close, too close. Cal felt the concussion, felt something hot tear through his left shoulder. He went down hard, ears ringing. Through the haze he saw Reese still firing, methodical, professional, the Argentine positions being suppressed. But more were coming. Cal tried to rise. His shoulder wouldn't respond properly. Warm blood soaked his jacket. An Argentine soldier appeared on the rocks above them, FAL raised. Cal couldn't reach the L-42A1, couldn't move fast enough. Reese fired. The Argentine dropped. But another appeared. And another. The colonel was hit. Cal saw him stagger, blood spreading across his chest. No. Cal forced himself up, grabbed the L-42A1 with his right hand, couldn't shoulder it properly, fired from the hip at an Argentine soldier 10 feet away, missed, cycled the bolt one-handed. Impossible. The rifle too heavy, too awkward. He dropped it, grabbed a fallen FAL, modern, semi-automatic, the weapon he'd wanted all along, and hated himself for needing it. The FAL spoke. 20 rounds, full magazine, suppressive fire that drove the Argentines back long enough for Cal to reach Reese. The colonel was down, chest wound, bad, but conscious. "The rifle," Reese gasped. "Forget the rifle." "Get it." Cal looked back. The L-42A1 lay in the rocks, abandoned, while he'd fought with a captured FAL. He grabbed the British rifle, slung it, then lifted Reese in a fireman's carry. 400 yards to the British aid station, under fire, Cal's shoulder screaming, Reese bleeding on his back. He made it. Medics took Reese, pulled him into cover, started working. Cal collapsed against a rock, the L-42A1 across his knees, blood on the woodstock, his or Reese's, he couldn't tell. A young medic looked at his shoulder. "You need treatment." "Later." "Sir," I said later. Cal watched them work on Reese, watched the colonel's chest rise and fall, shallow, laboured, but breathing. Above them, Mount Longdon burned, tracer fire arcing through the darkness, explosions, the sound of men dying. By dawn it was over. The mountain was British. 23 paratroopers were dead, 47 wounded. The Argentine losses were catastrophic. Cal sat in the rocks as the sun rose, painting the South Atlantic gold and red. The L-42A1 lay beside him, silent, patient. Reese was evacuated at first light. Alive, he'd survive. Before they loaded him on the helicopter, he looked at Cal. "The rifle did its job," Reese said, voice barely audible over the rotors. "But war's changing, faster than we are." Cal held up the L-42A1. "You taught me it's not about the rifle," Reese smiled, blood on his teeth. "Then I taught you right." The helicopter lifted, banked, disappeared toward the hospital ships offshore. Cal stood alone on Mount Longdon. Around him, exhausted British soldiers consolidated their positions, dug in, prepared for the counterattack that never came. Because 4 days later, Argentina surrendered. The war was over, and Cal finally understood what the L-42A1 had been trying to teach him all along. That discipline beat technology, that patience beat speed, that one perfect shot mattered more than 100 rushed ones, that the shooter makes the weapon work, not the other way around. He looked down at the rifle in his hands, wood and steel, older than his father, a relic from Victorian battlefields that had just fought through a modern war, and 1. Port Stanley, June 20th, 1982. The town smelled like cordite and diesel, and the bodies they were still pulling from collapsed positions. Cal sat in a requisitioned building that had been Argentine headquarters a week ago, writing his report for men in Virginia who would never understand what had happened here. His left shoulder was bandaged, 3 pieces of shrapnel removed. The doctors said he'd been lucky. An inch to the right and he'd have bled out on Mount Longdon before anyone could reach him. Cal didn't feel lucky. He felt old. The wall... L-42. A1 leaned against the wall beside him, cleaned, oiled, ready, as if the war hadn't ended. He looked at the rifle for a long moment, then back at his typewriter. Assessment of British military capabilities in South Atlantic operations. What could he tell them? That the British had won with equipment their own military considered obsolete? That bolt-action rifles had proven more reliable than semi-automatics in conditions that mattered? That discipline and training had overcome technological disadvantage? They wouldn't believe him. They'd read it as romanticism. The nostalgia of an officer who'd gone native, Cal typed anyway. Victory achieved despite material disadvantage demonstrates that fundamental marksmanship discipline provides greater tactical advantage than technological superiority. British emphasis on first-round accuracy over volume of fire proved decisive in extended-range engagements under adverse conditions. Recommend comprehensive review of current sniper doctrine. He stopped, read it back. It sounded like heresy, but it was the truth. The door opened. A Royal Marine captain Cal didn't recognize. Mr. Ashford? Signal from Lieutenant Colonel Rees. He's stable. Recovering at the hospital ship. He wanted you to know. Relief hit Cal harder than he expected. Thank you. The captain placed a small wooden case on the desk. The colonel also sent this. Said you'd earned it. Cal opened the case. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, was the L-42A1's scope. Serial number matched the rifle beside him. A note in Rees's handwriting. So you remember what discipline looks like. Cal held the scope up to the light. The glass was scratched. The housing dented. It had seen 2 wars and a dozen small conflicts. It was perfect. Camp Peary, Virginia, 1985. 3 years after the Falklands, Cal had settled into his role as senior instructor for the CIA's paramilitary operations program. The work was familiar. Teaching the next generation how to operate in shadows, how to train foreign fighters, how to survive in places that didn't officially exist. His office overlooked the firing range where students worked through shooting drills with M21s and AR-15 variants. Modern weapons for modern warfare. The L-42A1 hung on his wall, mounted, displayed, serial number FA15487 on a small brass plate beneath it. A young officer named Kessler stood in the doorway, fresh from training, confident the way people who haven't been shot at yet are confident. Sir? Question about the rifle on your wall. Why keep an obsolete weapon on display? Cal looked up from his paperwork, set down his pen, walked to the rifle and lifted it from its mounts. What makes a good sniper, Kessler? The young man straightened. Marksmanship, fieldcraft, patience. Equipment? Modern optics help. Semi-automatic capability for multiple targets. Wrong. Cal handed him the rifle. Feel that weight. 10 pounds, bolt action. By modern standards, completely inadequate. But this rifle taught me something your fancy M21 never could. He pointed to the window where students were firing. They're learning speed, volume, hoping something connects. Cal worked the rifle's bolt, still smooth after decades. This rifle doesn't let you hope. One shot, make it count. That's discipline. That's what wins at 800 yards in 40-mile-per-hour winds. Kessler looked at the rifle with new respect. "I carried this through the Falklands," Cal said quietly. "Resented it at first, wanted semi-automatic, wanted modern technology. Then I learned that technology is a tool, discipline is the weapon. The rifle enforced that lesson every time I worked the bolt." He took the L42A1 back, returned it to its mounts. "I keep this because it reminds me what matters. Not the newest equipment, mastery of fundamentals, that's what I teach. That's what keeps my students alive." After Kessler left, Cal sat at his desk, pulled out a letter that had arrived that morning. British postage, Reese's handwriting. "Cal, the L42A1 is being phased out. Accuracy International won the trials. L96A1 is the future. Modern, purpose-built. The old girl's time is done, but what she taught lives on in men like you. That's legacy enough." Alistair Cal folded the letter carefully, added it to the growing stack in his drawer. 3 years of correspondence. 2 soldiers staying in touch across an ocean, bound by shared memory. He looked at the rifle on his wall. "Your time's not done," he thought. "Not while I'm still teaching." 1992, Langley, Virginia. Cal's retirement ceremony was brief. The CIA didn't do grand farewells, just a conference room, a few colleagues, a plaque thanking him for 29 years of service, 47 years old and feeling twice that. In his office afterward, packing the last boxes, he found Reese's latest letter. "Cal, it's official. L42A1 declared obsolete, April 1992. Sold to collectors, mostly. I kept mine. Serial FA15489. Sits in my study now. A reminder of cold rocks and colder winds, of lessons learned in the hardest school. Keep yours. Not as trophy, as teacher. The next generation needs to learn what we learned." Alistair Cal packed the letter with the others. 10 years of correspondence now. A friendship forged in combat, maintained through words on paper. He took the L42A1 from the wall, wrapped it carefully. This rifle would come home with him, would hang in his study, would continue teaching even in retirement, because some lessons were too important to forget. 2007, Reston, Virginia. The telegram arrived on a Tuesday morning in March. Cal knew what it was before he opened it. "You don't live 62 years without developing instincts about death. Lieutenant Colonel Alistair Reese, retired, Royal Marines, passed peacefully March 11, 2007. Heart failure, funeral private, family only. Per his wishes, we are notifying his closest colleagues." Cal sat at his desk for a long time, holding the paper. He'd outlived too many friends, but this one hurt differently. He opened the bottom drawer. 25 years of letters, tied with string. Reese's handwriting on every envelope. The correspondence had continued long after the war ended, long after Cal left the agency. 2 soldiers staying connected across an ocean. Cal untied the string, read through them, not all, just enough. 1985, "Your students are learning the right lessons, pass them on." 1992, "The L42A1 is obsolete, but what it taught lives on." 1998, "My grandchildren ask about the Falklands. I tell them about an American who learned to shoot properly." 2003, "Getting old, Cal, knees failing, but fundamentals remain, in shooting, in life." 2006, "This will likely be my last letter, heart's failing, but what a run we had. From Grytviken to Mount Longdon, the rifle brought us together. The lessons kept us connected. Thank you for being worthy of both." Cal closed the letters, went to his study, took down the L42A1. The wood was still smooth, the action still perfect. 40 years since Reese had first handed him this rifle aboard HMS Fearless. 40 years since Cal had resented it, fought it, finally understood it. He sat with the rifle across his knees, and for the first time since the Falklands, Callum Ashford cried, not for the rifle, not for the war, for the friend who'd taught him that being a warrior wasn't about the weapon you carried. It was about the man you became. Later, he wrote a letter, knowing it would never be sent, needing to write it anyway. Alistair, you taught me more than shooting. You taught me patience, the difference between hoping and knowing. You taught me that some things, fundamentals, honor, friendship, never become obsolete. The E42A1 hangs on my wall, not as trophy, as memorial to you, to what you taught me, to 25 years of letters and lessons. Thank you, old friend, for everything. Cal, he folded the letter, placed it with Reese's letters in the drawer, then he mounted Reese's final letter on the wall beside the L42A1, the one from 2006. Not just a rifle on display anymore, a friendship, a legacy, a reminder that the best teachers are the ones who change who you are. 2010, Reston, Virginia. Cal's study smelled like old books and gun oil. 65 years old now, retired 8 years. The agency sent Christmas cards he never answered. A knock on the door. Grandpa? His grandson stood in the doorway, 18 years old, fresh from boot camp, Marine uniform, crisp and new. Come in, Ben. The kid entered, looked around at walls lined with books, maps, photos from a career Cal never discussed, and the rifle. Ben walked to it, ran his hand along the wood stock. This is the one you carried in the Falklands? That's the one. It's old, Cal smiled. Older than me. But you used it, even though there were newer weapons. Not by choice at first. Cal stood, took the rifle from its mounts, the weight familiar, comfortable. I resented this rifle, thought it was obsolete. I was wrong. He worked the bolt, still perfect, still smooth. This rifle taught me that being certain matters more than being fast, that one perfect shot matters more than 10 rushed ones. He handed it to Ben. Your generation will have better equipment, lighter, more accurate. But equipment doesn't make you effective. Mastery does. Ben shouldered the rifle. They're issuing us M16A4s. Good weapon. Master it, but remember, you're the weapon, your training, your discipline. The rifle is just a tool. Cal walked to his desk, opened the drawer, pulled out the bundle of letters. Before you ship out, read these. Ben took them, looked at the dates. 1982 to 2006, 25 years. Who wrote them? The man who taught me everything that mattered. Lieutenant Colonel Alistair Rees, British Royal Marines, the man who first handed me that rifle and told me I needed to learn patience. Ben untied the string, started reading. Cal watched his grandson's face change as he went through them, saw the moment Ben understood. This wasn't about a rifle, it was about a friendship, about lessons passed down, about legacy. Ben looked up. You kept every letter. Every one? We wrote about shooting, about war, about what matters and what doesn't. Cal touched the letters gently. He died 3 years ago. Heart failure. I never got to say goodbye in person, but we'd said everything that needed saying in these. Ben looked at the rifle on the wall, at Reese's letter mounted beside it. It's not about the rifle at all, is it? No, it's about the man who taught me to use it, and the lessons that outlived us both. Cal took the letters back, returned them to the drawer. You'll have instructors. Some will teach you mechanics, how to field strip your weapon, how to zero your sights. And some will teach you more. Some will teach you what it means to be a professional warrior. When you find that instructor, listen. Learn, and 30 years from now you'll still be learning from them. Ben came to attention, not formally, just respect. I'll remember, Grandpa. After Ben left, Cal sat alone in his study. Evening light slanted through the windows, painting everything gold. He looked at the rifle, at Reese's letter beside it, at the drawer full of 25 years of friendship preserved on paper. "Thank you, old friend," Cal said quietly, "for showing me that the best weapons are the ones that make us better." The study was silent, except for the old clock ticking. On the wall, the L-42A1 hung in its place of honor. Not just a weapon, not just history. A teacher, a memorial, a testament to friendship forged in war and sustained through peace. Cal smiled, turned off the light. The rifle remained in the gathering darkness, silent, patient, eternal, still teaching, always teaching.